Hello everyone, and thanks for staying with us. In this panel, we'll discuss how AI and data are used in the age of coronavirus. Will AI and data help us fight the coronavirus? How should governments and companies use AI and data responsibly? It's going to be a fascinating panel. Welcome everybody to our panel at the Future of AI virtual event. The panel is titled AI and Data in the Age of Coronavirus. We will also discuss AI and data in general in 2020. And there's no doubt that AI and data is being put to use more now than 100 years ago, where it didn't even exist, as we know it today, during the Spanish flu, right? So the big question is, how is it being used today? Some good and bad practices. How should governments and companies act responsibly? And what's coming next? I think that everyone is interested in hearing. We have an amazing group of entrepreneurs, CEOs, and investors here. Assaf Barnea from Sanara Ventures, CEO at Sanara Ventures, and Zohar Levkovitz, CEO and co-founder at Light. Amit Bendov from Gong, co-founder and CEO. Ohad Greenshpan from Namogoo, co-founder and CTO. So why don't we take maybe a minute or two, each one will introduce themselves, what you guys are doing today with data and AI and the fight against coronavirus. Let's start with Ohad.
Hi, thanks for inviting me. Namogoo protects the customer journey of companies online. We're active in the e-commerce space, helping digital companies to make sure that the customer journey behaves as intended. We have companies like Gap and ASOS and H&M and Argos and Dollar Shave Club, great companies. We make sure that no code that's running on the customer journey on the Gap.com, for example, no code that doesn't belong to Gap.com runs there. In other words, making sure that the revenue and the customers remain within the site and do not leave. A few months ago, we acquired a company called Personali that help us now provide individualized incentives to customers. In other words, we analyze their behavior online and in real time provide adaptive discounts to customers.
Great, so we'll talk about behavior. Is it different now than before, right? And how you guys are helping fight customer hijacking. Yeah. Zohar. We all know you from Shark Tank, Israeli version of Shark Tank, second season, right? Yeah. Big celebrity now in Israel.
In a way, yeah. But in addition to that, I'm also the CEO and co-founder of Light. And in Light, we are protecting kids and other minorities from what's going on social networks, social games, and so on, preventing pedophilia, shaming, bullying, self-harm, and so on. We're in the business for the last 18 months, so we're relatively young, but going very, very fast. And today we are working with some of the largest platforms, social networks, and so on, with several police departments in the US, with the Homeland Security Department in the US, and so on.
Thanks for inviting me. Amit Bendov from Gong. We're a 350 people company based in San Francisco, Tel Aviv, founded 4.5 years ago. We have over 1,000 companies relying on our software. Gong is revolutionizing the CRM industry. Traditionally, companies relied on data that is entered by either salespeople or customer support people. They'll talk with customers and then they fill in forms. That's how they shape an opinion on what's happening with their customers. Gong uses AI to monitor these conversations, emails, calls, Zoom video, automatically use natural language understanding to understand what's being said, and then compiles on the insight both for the leadership team and the customer-facing people to help them get better. I know you're from basketball, so just like think about like intelligent game tape for sales and support, and all of that without anybody lifting a finger.
I guess I'm the one who's closing the loop in terms of the healthcare crisis and the COVID-19, because this is what we do. Sanara Ventures is actually a joint venture of Philips and Teva Pharmaceutical. We invest in early stage companies all the way from seed stage, like $1 million, $1.5 million to A rounds, typically $5 to $7 million, and we're focusing pretty much on digital health, which a main theme within that is everybody's been asking what is digital health, but it's definitely AI is part of that component. wearables, drug development, disease management, anything that has to do with the ability to monitor, let it be from the distance or let it be from precision medicine, which everybody is looking into these days. So this is what we do. I'm also the chairman of the Life Science Board in the Israeli Export Institute, and this is maybe a point to talk later on in terms of the hub, being a hub of innovation, healthcare innovation in Israel, generally speaking, with I would say probably 500 startup companies related to digital health and AI, which is a major component within that.
Great. So let's start with a general question about governments, how governments all over the world are using AI and data to fight coronavirus, to decide on restrictions in mobility, etc., to track people, using their mobile phones. I know that in China they're using thermal devices, to detect infected people in train stations, etc. So what, in your opinion, should governments do to act responsibly, but at the same time, they have to fight, we all have to fight the virus?
If I may, there's a lot of processes now and discussions and by the legislative or by the various organizations within each and every country. But it's in my opinion, and this is one thing that I'd like to emphasize, is the knowledge sharing. We as humanity, as people on this planet, we need to better understand what is happening in Singapore, what is happening in China, what is happening in not working or working in Korea, in the Netherlands, in the UK. This is part of knowledge sharing. The knowledge sharing led by the government is essential, is a must do. Because there's been so many phenomena that we have to address in order to better understand the crisis and better understand the verticals within that disease. For instance, why we have not been seeing, like, if at all, corona patients in Thailand. This is an amazing. It's a huge country with I think the cases there are like less than 3,000 people. And if we find something which is relevant to that specific country, and let it be, if it's related to behavioral or cultural patterns or anything else, or something that has to do with the genomics of the people or whatever, this has to be understood in order to come up with breakthroughs. And knowledge sharing is a major component that could be addressed and led by governments.
Well, to be a little sarcastic, I would hope that at least some of them use some sort of intelligence, like artificial or not. It's not obvious to me, but I think there is a fantastic opportunity. Just the ability to, just the fact that we're on the verge of maybe finding a vaccine, right? So quickly, because so many people are some of it is using AI to fight a virus and generate a vaccine to a form that we're not even familiar with how it behaves versus so I think that's pretty incredible. The ability, I agree, to share data from different populations and understand differences and what's working here. We have some test case like a Sweden or Brazil or Thailand, right, that have or the UK like early stage. So there's plenty of opportunity. The technology is definitely there. The question whether politicians are eager to use it or not is still too open in my mind.
It's also hard. So data sharing, right? Real data, but you can also share. I mean, people share images, videos, sounds, stories, right? In a matter of seconds, and it's impossible to restrict them in doing that. So we definitely want governments to use intelligent data, etc.
Yeah, so as President Trump, I'm not a doctor, so I cannot say what we should do with AI regarding the COVID itself. But there are several phenomena that come along together with COVID that I believe that government should treat more. And for example, we just announced that we found a 900% raise in hate speech on Twitter related to the coronavirus. After the president of the US called it the Chinese virus and so on. We see more pedophiles online. We see all the phenomena going up during the time of COVID, and I believe that now that we are the entire world is trying to flatten the curve, that we should use AI in order to flatten some more curves. And that's what we are trying to achieve these days. And I'm glad to say that the world is a better place today, and more people are looking at the curves and trying to fix the problem, including the largest social networks and so on. So using an AI in order to solve these problems should be also related to this crisis.
Okay, so AI is one way, right? And then there's also company policy guidelines, right? Social networks such as Facebook, the largest of them, and others. Do you think they should do more?
Well, actually, they're doing more. They're doing more, and you know, the entire world is now talking about the COVID, and we should, because it is an amazing crisis. But during the time of COVID, we already lost about 600,000 people due to COVID, but on the same time, more than 700,000 people committed suicide, many of them because of social networks. Over than 3 million people during this time died out of starvation. So COVID is one issue, but let's focus as a humanity on other issues and solve some more problems, flatten some more curves.
I agree. I agree also with what Amit said. I think governments, I feel that governments today do not use or do not take advantage of the great technology that there is there, especially in Israel. I think that there's no doubt that COVID affects all of us as an industry, and I feel that if the government would ask us all as an industry to participate or to join and help, we would do that. I'm sure that every company would allocate some resources to help. Without going into too much into politics, I think that instead of leading by fear, I think what governments should do, try to leverage all the great technology that there is here, the great minds, the great coverage, the great data that we have, and also the great techniques that we develop to help solving this big problem.
For sure, and maybe lead by example too, right? That we haven't seen that being done everywhere.
Yeah, and by the way, let's not forget that some governments, especially in Israel, are using this crisis in order to take more power and track us and so on. So, you know, COVID, by the end of the day, we are going to pass it, but democracy should remain. And the government should not use too much power during this time in order to change the play.
Okay, great. So I think we covered that. Let's talk about opportunities. Okay, we know that in every crisis there's an opportunity, and we talked about the technology powerhouse in Israel and other places around the world too. So what do you guys think are the biggest opportunities, specifically for entrepreneurs who are watching us, for young companies, and even for other investors or big companies who want to make a change, maybe pivot, maybe invent something new? So what are the industries, what are the type of products that you see coming out of this crisis as winners?
Within the healthcare space, and this is a social distancing, so I'd like to extract the distance and talk about remote medicine or remote care or remote diagnostic or remote rehabilitation. For the last 10 years, telemedicine, for instance, for the last 10 years, it was discussed as telemedicine has to be there. It makes sense. There's no need to rush to the hospital. There's no need to go to the ER. There's no need to, wait in line for sometimes in hospitals in China for 7, 8, 9 hours, maybe unfortunately sometimes in Israel as well. And then eventually look into the child's ear and see if there's an inflammation. It doesn't make any sense, right? But up till one of the storms, I think that happened in Miami in the U.S. 2 or 3 years ago, for instance, in the U.S., telemedicine was not used as much as everybody expected it to be used. Now with the COVID-19, telemedicine is sky high. It's like rocket in the sense of launching that to amazing numbers of usage, telemedicine, remote care, and also remote rehabilitation from home, remote diagnostic. This is a true opportunity for entrepreneurs. Whatever could be complementary solution to those platforms that are already there, that were established 10, 12 years ago, and now really seeing a huge increase in demand and usage, mostly the usage. You have to have both the providers, the hospitals, the physicians, the nurses, as well as the patients or the consumer using that in order for that to work out. And this is an amazing opportunity. Anything that has to do with telemedicine, remote care, remote diagnostic, remote rehabilitation.
And what are the major applications from AI and data? Maybe image recognition that I can think of, or
well, we have a company, for instance, called My Home Doc that you have 4 sensors, a device that sets on the smartphone and allows you to do primary care testing without going to the hospital. So if you need to see into your child's ear or you need to see your throat, and there's an AI application that translates and understand the severity or the emergency, whether it's a triage application, as we call it in healthcare. So this is a decision whether you need to go to the hospital or you don't need to go to the hospital. So anything that has to do with the analytics of those images, of the data, the voices, let it be a stethoscope or anything of that nature, could be translated into an AI and a better decision to be taken.
And Amit, I think that your company does similar things for sales team, for revenue generating teams.
Yeah,
right?
Totally. And we're getting pulled. We're not doing it right now just for remote healthcare, right? Same things like doctors like now in Boston can treat people in Africa, right? So that's a massive opportunity. I think it's like tele everything. Everything is virtual. Definitely remote work. This isn't temporary. Like I think you'll see like a drop in commercial real estate for sure, but more people like allowing the flexibility. Like in the US right now, I could hire people in Milwaukee. Like I don't care. Like it's a bigger talent pool, cheaper, very flexible. People can choose to live where they want. They can spend more time with family, less carbon emissions. More time with the family. So just the possibilities are endless. Companies can hire, they can support customers everywhere. Even like I have like a personal Pilates trainer, and like usually I'd go to a studio, and on normal days I spend like half of my time in San Francisco, in which that I don't train, and when I'm in Israel I do if I'm not too jet lagged, right? Now she's doing it over a Zoom and says like, hey, do you realize we could do it now like anywhere in the world? Like says, yeah. So you could have like from a small town in Hadera, whatever, you could have clients like everywhere in the world. So it's, I think we're not even like starting to grasp the amount of opportunities out there. It's going to be a different world. There's a lot of pain and grief, but also a new possibility.
So the buzzwords that the entrepreneurs seeking to raise funds should use are remote, tele, right? I'm joking, of course, but it used to be AI and data. Maybe now it has to be remote and tele, something.
That's a big opportunity, a big problem. It's not easy to support and hire and engage a remote workforce. Or how
I'm curious to hear about the technology that you're using and some use cases. Maybe we'll discuss it later.
Yeah.
Zohar, you probably have a lot to say as an investor and the CEO of Light.
Yeah, sure. So as the CEO of Light, we are seeing many opportunities. And I'm not trying to be cynical, but for the first time in history, 50% of the world is sitting at home. And more kids are sitting at home and only using their iPads and iPhones. And more bad people, the pedophiles are also at home. So more opportunities for us. But, I'm not trying to be cynical, but we are trying to solve this issue. So as a company, we have many more opportunities. As an investor, I can only remember that the biggest companies that we know were created during depression times. Google, Facebook, all of them, 2001, 2008. So the best time to invest is during recession time. My money is more important right now, so I'm investing more. I see many opportunities. I don't know exactly what will be tomorrow. I don't know exactly when this crisis will be over, the biological crisis or the economical crisis. But I know that during this crisis, many good companies are going to build themselves. And that's what I'm trying to achieve today. During this time, I already invested in 5 companies in the last 3 months, and I will continue to do the same.
And what's the business model behind, for Light? I'm just curious because I haven't heard of a company that deals with online toxicity.
Yeah, so Light, we are working for the largest platforms, the Facebook of the world, and we are selling our software to them. So they are buying our software, paying us a lot of money for it, and we can give them a notification when something wrong is going on their network. Shaming, bullying, pedophilia, self-harm, and so on. So we're reporting it to them, and they should treat it according to their policy, according to regulations, and so on. So they're just paying us for our service. We call it the new SaaS, Safety as a Service.
Oh, nice. I'm also curious about your technology. I'm actually curious about everybody's technology. Maybe we can talk about it in a minute. Customer hijacking, another new term for me.
Yeah, before that, I would like to continue what my colleague said here about COVID. I think even when there's a vaccine, hopefully in 6 months, 9 months, depending who you ask, I think the COVID, the impact would not be over. I think we will continue seeing this impact for a few years now. And I think if we talk about opportunities, besides the bad things that are going on, I think there are great opportunities here as well. What we see both in the Israeli industry as well as we see it in our clients, on our client side as well, we see lots of consolidations going on. So we see, because it's much harder now, we see companies that struggle, are on the way to shut down or filing for bankruptcy, etc. So big companies acquire smaller companies. We see it. We acquired a company over Zoom during
So
COVID.
you never met the founders, the owners, CEO?
We met them one or two times.
So they're not in Israel?
So they are in Israel, but we could not meet them.
Okay.
So we met them like one or two times, but all the due diligence and all the talent acquisition and everything was over Zoom. It's not easy, but I think I agree with Zohar. I think there are great opportunities here. I think the COVID is not a different era. I think it's just an extreme projector on us, and I think that good companies will continue to be good companies. Great companies will be even greater during COVID. For example, Zappos is very famous for outperforming during depression time. So I think during these times, great companies will continue to be better because they have the ability to adapt faster, the ability to take advantage of opportunities, etc. So I think if we look at the good things, good aspects of the COVID, I think we can find as entrepreneurs and founders or investors, great opportunities in the market that can help us all be better.
Great, I agree. Let's talk about AI bias, and maybe we can talk about the technology in your companies a bit. So how do you fight AI bias, especially these days when people are not acting normally? And even looking at past data, we know that we as humans have bias in our decisions, in our judgment. Is it something that you ever faced in your companies, and how do you think it can be solved?
I think the way to fix AI bias is by looking as broad as possible and look as far as possible. Let's take an example, a few clients that we have. We have clients from the travel industry, we have clients from the fashion industry, we have clients from the home improvement industry, etc., furniture. So Wayfair, for example, is a business that is doing extremely well. Now, supermarkets are doing extremely well. Travel are shutting down. So I think if you look at each industry or type of client by its own, you will find this kind of bias. So you will see that things are going nuts.
Right. So
but I think when you look cross industry, when you look as broad as possible, I think you will see businesses going up, you see businesses going down, you see businesses going amazingly well, and see businesses that remain the same. So I think the way, and also if you look backwards, you have the ability to stabilize
you look at data pre-corona.
During corona, cross industries. That way you're able to stabilize your analysis.
Zohar, you monitor different demographics, different cultures. It must be a challenge for you.
So actually it is not a challenge, it is an opportunity for us because the phenomena that we are monitoring are the same phenomena right now, but on steroids. So there is more hate, more white supremacy, more racism, more violence, more pedophiles, more everything, but they are acting the same as before. There are more of them, but acting the same. So for us, it is just a great opportunity to train our algorithm much, much faster because we can see more of the phenomena.
If you think about, let's say, AI that scans resumes and decides if you want to move forward with the candidates based on success in the company or tenure or something like that. So it's very easy to get something that creates like a feedback loop that tends to hire like the same kind of people that is anti-diversity, right? So that's where you need to intervene and make sure there's a richer objective function that takes like a number of considerations. there's a well-known problem in facial recognition that they tend to work more with with white people than other races, and even like Watson, I think like dropped like their facial recognition recently because they couldn't solve this. For Gong, we monitor conversations and we see which one is success. Success could be like a happy customer or a sale made, and it doesn't understand how people look or what they do. You know, if someone did something successful, then that pattern is now being trained to everybody. So it actually creates equality. It's like it's blind to any parameters such as race and things. I wouldn't say we're contributing to equality, but we're not creating a problem.
You look at results first, is
Exactly.
what you said,
So
right?
results, like whatever works, like everybody gets to adopt.
I think within healthcare, it's a bit different. If you look into a CT scan, a person is a person. I'd like to address a bit of a different bias concepts or barriers for embracing technologies. It's been said that AI will replace the physician, for instance. It's a concept that people have been not having enough trust at the moment, at least, to understand. Even physicians and nurses and the population itself, in terms of the benefits and the true value within AI being implemented in healthcare. The bottom line in healthcare is there's a inability to basically to stand to the demand versus the ability to provide the services. This is globally, across the world. If you look into the amounts of healthcare expenditures within the United States, it's getting to 18% of the GDP. This is crazy. I mean, in Israel, it's between 7 to 8%. In some other countries, it's still much than it should be. So those inefficiencies, the stagnation, whatever we got used to do for decades and decades, this has to change. And the COVID-19 is just proving us that this is a major change that has to be addressed. And AI is a major vehicle for that. But then it comes down to the question, the psychological question, whether it's going to be eventually truly embraced by the people, by elderly people in nursing home, or by the physicians or by the nurses. And this is a dance that has to be danced with both the providers as well as the patients, as I said before. But the bias of or the concept or the misunderstanding of where AI might be threatening the decision. I need to see a doctor. I don't want a physician which is a machine, which is an AI system to tell me whether I'm sick or not, whether I should be taking this drug or not. So under what is called the new normal, everybody's been talking now, at least in healthcare, about the new normal, and this new normal will be a combination of a decision supporting system, a lot of AI that will help eventually reduce the amounts of the demand and the inability to provide those services. And we all going to be using that. Hospitals all over the world, more and more AI system that support decision, faster decision, improve decision, precision medicine. Some companies in Israel, we have a company, iMedis, which is doing AI for CT scans, looking into the early onset of cancer. There's another Israeli company called Viz, which is doing an AI for strokes, for a better channeling the patients to the right place. As you know, within stroke cases, time is brain. The more time that is passing by, you lose more of your brain. So this is where AI essentially is a major vehicle to be able to address those issues, medical issues, in a much faster and improved way. And I think that will help the adaptation eventually, and the fear of using AI will somehow will be resolved.
How do you really, convince or prove the viability, the effectiveness of machine learning, of AI, of big data in those companies, especially for people who are negative to it and don't want to use it? What's the right way to convince them, to show them the value in it? We have some viewers from big traditional companies who are here to learn. So how would you approach that?
The magic here is to translate all this sophistication to to simplicity for business people. So, for example, we sell great technology, very sophisticated, at the end of the day to chief digital officer or head of e-commerce. He doesn't know about machine learning. He doesn't care about AI. So I think it's on us to bridge this complexity to the simplicity that he needs, he or she. And I think we as people that deal with AI should not fall in love in technology. Technology doesn't care. Technology is not the important thing. Exactly. You sell to someone that needs simplicity, sell something simple. And I think a model for such a good bridge is Google, for example. So no matter how, it always have been like that. No matter how complex the algorithm is, at the end of the day, you want to provide a very simple UI that you just type in words and you get answers. So they don't put all the complexity on you as a user.
Type or speak these days, right?
It has to be very, very simple for the audience that you sell to, for your champion.
So for me, I'm not sure that AI is relevant for anyone, or not anyone, but everyone. And AI is not a product, it is not even a technology, it is a buzzword. And you know, I'm in this industry for 25 years, and before AI, everyone did blockchain and Bitcoin, and prior to that, cloud and big data and Web 2.0 and so on. It is a buzz. And by the end of the day, we are not selling this as a product. But if we can convince someone that the results that we are getting are better, it doesn't matter if it is based on AI or ML or any other buzz. It is about the product that we are selling. It is about the results that we are selling. And what I learned about buzzwords is that 70% of the audience have no clue what is AI. I'm not sure that I understand exactly what is an AI, what is the technology behind it. There is no specific technology. So for me, it is blockchain, Web 2.0, doesn't matter. By the end of the day, if the results are better, let's sell the results. If they are not better, who cares?
I will say, as a startup, like, I don't try to convince. We're too small and life is too short to try to convince the people that are hard to convince. So it's, you know, if like someone in the industry has like a weapon, right? Let's say your competitor is using something, increases their sales. Now it's a lot easier. So find someone that does want, and don't try the people that don't want. We never try hard.
I don't want to say that money comes before saving lives. In some cases, it is true. Decision could be taken eventually by how much this drug is going to cost and whatever the amounts of population that has to be treated, also by governments, by the way. But I don't want to be stating that as a fact. But for sure, I would say that whenever you can build a technology or a solution eventually that reduces costs for hospitals, providers, whatever, insurers, whatever it may be, employers, this will be a bottom line for the end of the day if they're going to adopt it and buy it. And if you can monetize the technology into a solution that reduces cost, this is eventually number one in the decision-making process. And then sometimes it comes also if you save lives, then even better. But unfortunately, I have to say that because it does happen every now and then. But definitely the bottom line would be, logistics, even behind the scene of whatever is happening in terms of hospitals, providers, the value chain that provides drugs, the drug development process, if you can do something within that to expedite the process, instead of waiting obviously 15 years and $1 billion or $2 billion for drug development, if you can do it in much more effective way eventually and reduce the cost, this will be embraced eventually by the industry.
So we can summarize it maybe with show me the money, right? Reduce cost, improve, increase revenue, profitability, show me the value. Exactly. Okay, so one last question, and it is, what's your advice to leaders? You're all leaders in your domains. What's your advice to leaders as to how to, personally and in their company, how to deal with this crisis, these uncertain times?
I would say identify opportunities and evolve fast. That's, I think, the companies that, or entrepreneurs or managers that understand the situation and adapt to it are the ones that are going to succeed.
For companies today that have no enough money in the bank account, they should just close and go home, but otherwise find the opportunities, go after it.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, like, a lot of people say, well, it's not the same, right? It's not the same, but there's an opportunity, and just the cliche that the ones that survive aren't the strongest is the quickest to adapt, right? People are right that the world has changed. There's plenty of opportunity, and you need to change the game quickly, and most tech companies will do fine.
Knowing a lot of entrepreneurs in Israel, and hopefully we're not addressing just entrepreneurs in Israel, but generally speaking, I would say listen. listen. We're all kind of a little bit too aggressive sometimes in explaining about the technology, about the potential, but the feedbacks, the market validation, the business model is eventually does come from a careful listening. Listen to what is truly been said by a customer, by the fact that it's sometimes when it's been said, interesting does mean that it's not interesting. We're not going to buy it. It's just a word, to say goodbye. Listen carefully, and then adapt and do the changes that are required.
Sometimes when we fall in love, we less listen.
Exactly.
So more listen,
exactly.
less fall in love.
Exactly.
Great, thank you. So thank you for this insightful conversation. I learned a lot. I had a lot of fun. I hope you did too, and the audience as well. And we'll see you at the next panel. Hopefully we'll be way ahead in the fight against coronavirus. Thanks to AI and data, and thanks to your advice.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
Thank you.